To you, and thank you so much for choosing NTV Uganda to turn on your world. Now, every June 20th, the Refugee Law Project does join the rest of the world to commemorate World Refugee Day. This significant day not only does highlight the challenges that refugees face, but also celebrating their incredible resilience as well as strength. Now, the government of Uganda has been at the forefront of standing in solidarity with refugees. As a country, our ethical obligation is to assist those in dire need in line with the 1951 Refugee Convention, which does provide for access to asylum and to international protection for refugees as well as those that are seeking asylum, and also promoting durable solutions. Now, it's against this background that the Refugee Law Project is holding a live televised dialogue under the theme In Solidarity with Refugees today, the 20th of June 2024, here on NTV Uganda, starting now all the way into the 11 o'clock hour of the day. Now, the purpose of this dialogue is to meet three things. One, increase public awareness. The second thing is understanding of refugee issues. And the third thing we hope to get out of this dialogue is the experiences shared by my panelists in their different capacities and what they have been able to interface with in regards to hosting refugees and what would be their recommendations to some of the challenges they believe are on ground in reality, but also advocate for inclusive policy and practice to support refugees as well as promote social cohesion, strengthening partnerships with media outlets for the ongoing collaboration as well as engagement on refugee issues, among others. Delighted to be having this conversation with Mr. Charles Bafachi from the Office of the Prime Minister. We're also being joined by Robert Hakiza, who is the Executive Director at YARID. Amidst us, we also do have Charity Immaculate, who is a gender-based violence officer at the Refugee Law Project, as well as John Mary Chisembo, who is a project director with Jesuit Refugee Services. I am Priscilla Regina Nalwoge, and I'm your host for this conversation. Now, turning to my panelists in the room this morning, good morning to you, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning, Priscilla.
So I'll start with salutations, starting with the government as it oversees this discussion that we're going to be having, then we'll follow through.
Yes, Priscilla, I'm Bafachi Charles, an assistant commissioner in the Office of the Prime Minister, Department of Refugees. We are the government agency responsible for receiving, documenting, hosting, and providing durable solutions to refugees. I've been doing this work for now almost 30 years, and the subject, I live with it on a daily basis.
Bread.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Absolutely.
Yes, John.
Yes, Priscilla, thank you so much for this platform. My name is John Mary Kisembo, and I work with Jesuit Refugee Service in the capacity of Urban Refugee Project Director. We, as a Jesuit Refugee Service, we have been operating in the country for the last 30 years and working and serving refugees and vulnerable host community members in the area of education, livelihoods, peace building, mental health and psychosocial, and also basic needs or emergency needs. In relation to the topic today, in solidarity with refugees, we are living this for the last 30 years. Thank you
so much. Charity, good morning.
Thank you, Priscilla. My name is Charity Immaculate, and I work with the Refugee Law Project at the head office in Kampala. At the Refugee Law Project, our mandate is mainly to promote the dignity and the human rights of the refugees. As an institution, we are under Makerere University School of Law, who were established in 1999, and we've had a quite long period of time, over 20 years, when we are supporting the refugees to promote their rights, their human rights, irrespective of their legal status in Uganda. And we've worked closely with government, major to the services that we offer as an institution. We provide legal services comprehensively to the refugees. Many of them are always in conflict with the law. Many of them come here when they do not understand what is their role, what are the obligations, what are their rights. But as an institution, we've championed this in Uganda, and we've done it closely with other partners, the judiciary, OPM, as it's the main government entity that has a general mandate to ensure the protection of the refugees. Importantly, as RLP, we provide gender services. Mainly, we do rehabilitation of victims of war. We provide GBV prevention and response services, cutting across from the psychosocial, from the medical, from the community engagements, community education campaigns, educating refugees and their neighboring hosts on related issues. Still, as many of the refugees come in the country with a history of violence and exploitation and abuse and suffering and misery, we have the mental health program that mainly provides comprehensive psychosocial support. Many of the refugees are really traumatized, and many of them are going through depression. So we provide all these services, and the other services that we offer as RLP is the transitional justice and governance related matter. Uganda has had a history of war. So we work closely with the local communities, with other stakeholders, to ensure that people understand these issues, and also importantly see how best can we have a peaceful country, and also contribute to that, to those governance related issues. Then the media for social change, we do a lot. Actually, this is part of the media for social change. We work a lot closely with media houses, with the communities, with the refugee communities, in helping them to understand issues that are happening in their communities, issues of refugees, and how best the refugees can also contribute to also help other publicly, the outside, to know what are these issues that affect them, how best can they be addressed. Thank you very much.
One of the key things that I picked out from you, and I hope that we can shed more light on later, is obligation of refugees. Many a times it's only the talk about the rights of refugees, but never the obligation. And so it raises a perturbing question, especially for hosting communities. Robert Akiza, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. And, good morning, colleagues, and good morning, viewers. First of all, I'm happy to be here. My name is Robert Akiza. I'm the Executive Director of YARID. YARID in full stands for Young African Refugees for Integral Development. We are a refugee-led organization. And I would like to really give a very big thank to the government of Uganda. As we usually say, Uganda is a model, and really it's a model. I'm saying this because, you know, some years back, it was very difficult to find refugees taking part of this wonderful discussion that we are, like the one we are having here today. And but Uganda has been actually taking the lead in ensuring that we have meaningful refugee participation. And as we said, as a refugee, we always say that is the way to go. So my organization is also working to support and enhance with other many organizations here in urban area, but also in the settlement, to see how together we can address the many issues that refugees are facing. So we are supporting in the area of education. We are looking at how to make sure that the refugee children transition, you know, peacefully and smoothly in the mainstream. We are also providing support in the livelihood, whereby we are providing a lot of support in making sure refugees get the skills that they need so that they can be able to take care of themselves. But also we make sure that we provide the support within our communities. Like as you know, every day there are issues rising in the communities. Sometimes they come and it will be very difficult for let's say, the government and also the UNHCR and other organizations to get to know about these issues very quickly. But us who are part of the community, we have to make sure that through the community volunteers that we're having, we make sure that quickly they identify these issues and bring them to our attention. As an organization, we are not always able to address these issues alone, but we have to make sure that once they come to our attention, those who can address, we address them, and those who cannot address, we refer them to other organizations like Refugee Law Project, GRS, so that they can get the support that they need. And we've been doing this for the last 16 years. So we have offices here in Kampala, but also we do operate in northern Uganda in Palabek Refugee Settlement, in Chegegwa District, in Chakatu Refugee Settlement, but also in Nakivale Refugee Settlement. Thank you so much.
All right. Coming back to, of course, our topic being focused on solidarity with refugees, you can be able to join this discussion, stream live across our social media platforms on Facebook as well as YouTube. And in between there, feel free to drop a comment or even a question, an inquiry or a point of information, so that together we can be able to forge a way forward for a better livelihood and caring of refugees, especially in light of the fact that we are one of the best hosting nations on the African continent, which makes me turn to the government here, Mr. Bafachi. In regards to statistics, in the last 10 years, we've been relying on the number through UBOS of 1.6 million refugees that we have in the country. But with the recent statistics that were collected yet again, what do those statistics look like today? Have they changed? Are they more or less? And what has actually made them more or less either way? And then, of course, we also would like to know which other countries of origin for some of the refugees we're hosting in Uganda.
Thank you, moderator. First of all, who is this refugee? Who is the refugee? Because sometimes that one also, I found it an issue with some people not defining who a refugee is. And I think that's where we should start from, to know that a refugee has, in the context of Uganda, can be defined from two international legal instruments. The 1951 Convention and its protocol of 1967 would define a refugee as someone who is on the basis of a well-founded fear, runs away from his country of origin or domicile and crosses the border to another country. So if I cross the border and I have a well-founded fear and I ask for refuge, then I'm a refugee. But that would not suffice for the conditions in Africa where actually people move in mass. And there we use the OAU Convention, which also creates a room for so many people running in mass, and they cannot be processed per claim per individual, on claims per individual, and that's what we call prima facie refugees. And in our case, when you look at refugees from DRC, refugees from South Sudan, they move in a mass, 10,000, maybe 50,000 in a week or in a day. Then you cannot process them individual status. So we do what we call prima facie, and we grant en masse. So those are the refugees. They must cross the border, they must seek for asylum. Now, there are people who could be in Uganda moving around. They are not necessarily refugees unless they have asked for asylum and they have been documented, and we have that. Now, coming to our theme this year is standing in support with refugees, and I think this cannot be, this is the best, I think, theme I can say, because globally, the refugee situation is just, I don't say getting out of hand, but it is quite enormous. As of this month, the total global population of refugees is 130 million. we have 130 million people in this world of ours who are uprooted and hence are refugees. So they need support, as we all know, and the global events that are producing refugees probably are well known. Most importantly, wars, and they are increasing every day. You have situations in Europe, you have situations in Asia, Myanmar and we used to call it Burma. I think they call it another name. You have Ukraine. All those are producing new refugees. Originally, it used to look like an African problem, but apparently it is a global issue. Refugees can break out from anywhere. And in terms of our refugees statistics, in Uganda, we are talking about coming to 1.7 million refugees. To be exact, is 1,838,000 refugees. But at the rate we have, I think by end of July, we should be going into 1.7 million refugees, mainly from DRC, South Sudan, apparently even now Sudan, which is a little bit far away from here. But the refugees from Sudan are finding their way into Uganda, mainly because that is where they can find safety. And the issue is about danger to life. So you only run to where you think you will be safe. Okay. And
all right, Robert, you are one who interacts with the demography that's very sensitive, the young people in this conversation. It's always the generic refugees, but your focus being on the young refugees, looking into statistics and facts. What has been your interaction with the young refugees, especially in line with safety and making sure that they can have a livelihood and perhaps build a future from a safer place?
Yes, thank you so much for the question. I think that is really a very important point, especially when we're talking about the young people. And as you can hear from Mr. Bafaki talking about the numbers, the 1.7 million, very soon we're going to reach there. And when you look clearly on the statistics, you're going to find that majority of them are young people, of course, the women. These are the young people who are forced to move from their country of origin and they find themselves here, where they have to start everything from scratch, from zero. They have left everything behind and so on, their education and so on. I think one of the first things that we need to look, and what we are trying to look at these young people, of course, we need first of all to make sure that, you know, these young people, they get used to the new environment where they are, because you know when you find yourself in a new environment and you don't know where to start from, it a little bit the languages and so on, that's where we always normally start, you know, make sure that they get ready to this kind of environment. It's only after that they learn the language, and also they try to find a connection within the community. That's when we can try to see, you know, what will be the next step. But of course, the young people, the main way to support them is education. And my colleagues who are here will agree with me that we're still having a very serious problem when it comes to the education of the young people. But of course, with the policies around here, with the open policies in Uganda, where refugees are able and have the right to access the public schools and so on, but there is still a lot that need to be done. Of course, at the primary level, you find that, you know, yes, sometimes you find so many refugee children can easily go join the primary school, but when it goes to the secondary education, it becomes challenging. I don't want even to talk about the tertiary education. Sometimes we look at this and we say, what is the future? But of course,
Robert, can you humanize this conversation? Because you deal with these people on a daily basis. Humanize for us. Give us some real stories and experiences to better understand the resilience and hardships the young people face.
Yeah, the stories, they are really many. I'm looking here at a young person who has fled, let's say, from DRC, and who comes here, and this young person has to make sure that has to make sure that he navigates, or as I said, the environment and stuff. Of course, we've seen some of them who have gotten, like this young person may be lucky and gets to enroll to one of the schools here. Well, of course, many of them, some of them, they do to go through that, and once they finish, you know, it goes also, you know, this person, he has to make sure that now they find either a job, or the person must make sure that they find something to do that is going to help them to earn an income. But of course, getting a job, you know how difficult it is because of actually the rate of unemployment in Uganda. But also doing businesses also depends on the support that they can get, you know, so that they can have a startup that way to start from. But of course, we've seen these young people picking so quickly. If they get to find a support, sometimes you find them very quickly, they pick up, and they start earning, doing gainful activities that support them, you know, to move on with their life. Yeah.
Okay, all right. In terms of education, are they easily adaptive to the education systems here?
Well, as you know, the education system, like when you look, for instance, at refugees coming from these non-English speaking countries, you find when they come here, the education system is completely different. So you have to shift to the other new education system. And that is where we are trying to focus on as an organization with our bridging to formal schooling program, whereby we have first to take them through, you know, through this, it's sort of a transition where they have to go through this transition so that they get prepared for the new education system and the new environment of education where they are going, language, but also to understand the new education system that they are in. Yeah.
Okay, all right. John, you deal with the urban side of this conversation. We would think that it could be a little bit closer and maybe better addressed or dealt with, but in regards to your capacity, what are some of those issues that have actually continuously grown through the work that you have done over 30 years? It's a recurring issue that has not yet found solution.
Yes, thank you so much, Priscilla. By definition, and Mr. Bafaki tried to bring this out, by definition, a refugee is a vulnerable person, if we start from there. And looking at the trend, the statistics of how these numbers have been growing in the country, we have to agree that the problem has been growing, especially in ensuring that there is service given to refugees. He has indicated that biggest percentage of the people we are working with are youth. And this indicates that we have a big number of school-going children at all levels. And we also have to think of the emergency. And looking at the design of the programs in the country, we mentioned that yes, it's an open door policy where refugees are welcomed into the country regardless of their nationalities and ethnic affiliation, but also be able to move to look for employment opportunities. And also he very well talked about the prima facie grant that is given to refugees to be able to come in and settle, but also the point of providing them space, land, to be able to engage into economical growing some foodstuffs. But we are talking about a number of people who are going to leave most probably from where they are designated in terms of settlements, and then come to urban area to find a living and to survive. Here we are talking about education, access to education, We are talking about health, good healthy facilities. We are talking about other facilities that a person would really want to ensure that is able to access. In the urban area, when we get into the open policy, you will get to know that there are two types of refugees. There are those that are self-settled, and those you find them in the urban areas, and those that are in the designated areas established by the government through the Office of Prime Minister. We want to talk about all these categories and mention that the growing number of urban refugees is alarming. Even today, as we speak, we have over 140,000 refugees that are living around Kampala, and that is just Kampala. And we are talking about, if they are self-settled, they are competing with nationals. Okay, if a family or a household are going to look for a school, they have to compete with Priscilla. They have to compete with a national to, get good education for their children. If they are going to the market, they have to be able to communicate, and Robert has clearly indicated even the biggest percentage of refugees we have in the country are not English speaking. So language is becoming a problem. Then you need to think about most of these services, and yes, as partners, we have been able to come in with the support of the government to see that their languages, especially for adoption, be able to communicate to the people in the community, to bring about that peaceful coexistence, and be able to live to access and be able to meet their needs. Yes.
This is where I turn to you, Charity, with the Refugee Law Project in regards to something that these three gentlemen have all put out, the open door policy that the government of Uganda does have. We do believe it is a good one and it stems from a good place, but as far as where we stand right now, with the difficulties and challenges that have been presented in terms of integration and making sure that there's coexistence and catering to the refugees, is it one that can be edited to meet the present day time and address the challenges of present day towards refugees, if we are to stand in solidarity with them?
I think local integration would really be good to help as part of the durable solutions, because the main durable solutions are three. There is resettlement, there is local integration, and then self-repatriation. But then the repatriation is a process that is carefully studied, and government comes in. Although refugees these days, due to the difficulties that they are facing in the country, they are repatriating themselves even in countries that are really not yet safe for them. But I think local integration would really be good, although there are still gaps, because for local integration to be successful, we really need to look at the self-resilience of the refugees, having the economic capacity to provide the basics for themselves. But unfortunately, employment, he talked about it, employment opportunities is really a big gap. So how do you provide the basic needs that you need? Importantly is that language, yes, we appreciate that language is critical to this in helping local integration. A number of individuals, especially for the South Sudanese refugees, at least I had an opportunity to work in BDB settlement and Chiriandongo. There are some Luo speaking, but then there's also that category of refugees who do not speak the local languages. So we mainly provide education, English language training to help them be able to communicate, to help them easily integrate, because when they communicate, they little bit try to get good reception, but also they clearly understand when they talk to the nationals, when the refugees talk to the nationals, the communication eases socializing. Because on many occasions when you do not know the language, you keep mute, you can't communicate. But at least when you know the language, you'll be able to talk to people, you go to the social events, the cultural, the church, and the others. So while organizations continue to do the trainings, still there is a challenge in terms of language, because very few organizations are providing these services, and many of the refugees, others are not willing to go for those education language training. The few who go are easily socializing with others. And I think the local integration, possibly government, needs to really work closely with partners, see how best they can have this done, because honestly, their funding is completely reducing, and we need to look at solutions to help refugees live a better life in Uganda and stop going through the recurring misery, suffering that they go through from their countries.
Okay. When you speak of what you've spoken of, when I look at some of the communities where refugees have had to settle in, if they've not been able to easily integrate, especially as far as language and social affairs are concerned, what they resort to is create their own world, you know, create their own church, create their own school, have their own health center that actually speaks their own language of origin, from the countries of origin. Is that an advantage or a disadvantage to
I think it's both.
The hosting communities and to the nation? Let me first hear from Charity, then I'll hear from government.
I think it's both. We thank government that in a way that when it comes to many of the refugee settlements, by the way, different ethnic groups have come up with their churches because of language, by the way. So you'll find there are many churches of Congolese in a particular place, for Burundians, for Ethiopians, for Eritreans, for the different nationalities that we have in the country. And here in Kampala, you'll see in Zambia, Chirombe, there are quite many Congolese. And then when you go to Wakaliga, we have so many Burundians, and they have their meeting point, basically to help them easily socialize. But I think it's of advantage in that they provide peer support to themselves as refugees. Even when they are individuals who have issues or challenges, them as refugees, they meet in those spaces and share, how best do we help this person? This person has lost a loved one, how do we come in? So it's of an advantage to that. And even to us, organizations that need them, we walk in those spaces. It's where we find them, we get interpreters from them, and then we communicate our message, and the message is easily got. To me, I think it's more of advantage and disadvantage, because even it has simplified the partners' opportunities to reach them as they organize themselves in their own groups as individuals.
Mr. Bafachi, what does this translate for you? Because while we are saying in solidarity with refugees, if they are choosing to do things their own way that makes them more comfortable to settle in a host nation like Uganda, it's as if saying that we're not in solidarity with who they are and why they are here and helping them integrate locally. So it sounds like the glass is half full, half empty from where we're seated. But in regards to government and the lenses through which you see this discussion, is this an advantage for them and an advantage to the nation?
I think for me, first of all, the environment in Uganda, in which refugees find themselves, is so conducive. You can't believe that a refugee in Uganda enjoys the same rights as a Ugandan, save for the right to vote. That is the only difference. The rest, whether a refugee or a Ugandan, we live in the same environment, same conditions, same facilities. Now, if you are talking about language issues, if a Ugandan came from Arua and went to live in Kabale, he would find the same conditions. But does that make him a refugee? No, it doesn't. So what is important is the environment that allows you to cope with the situation. Fortunately, most of the refugees we host here come from the neighboring countries, and you will find that actually in Uganda, in Madi Sudan, there is Madi Uganda. There is Acholi Sudan, Acholi Uganda. So when they run, they are actually the same people. They speak the same language. So if you come to Kampala, you are from Adjumani, the Ugandan from Adjumani, you either will be speaking English or a local language. So if you are speaking a local language, you must look for where the Madis in Kampala are living so as to cope. So similarly, if a refugee from Congo does not know the other language, maybe he will try to find where Congolese are to help them cope. So it is not about a natural problem, but it is phenomenal, changing with the environment you change. Now, regarding integrating refugees into our society, for me, we have done it almost 90%. 90% because to be fully integrated is to gain the nationality of the host country. That is when we say integration has been completed. But at 90%, I think we are good students, because then these refugees can you know, do everything the Ugandan does. These challenges of economy affects all of us. Also, Ugandans don't find jobs easily, like my friend from Yarid was saying. It affects all of us. So what is important is that the conditions are conducive for you to exercise yourself, to exercise your right to work, your right to live, and we do that. Not that we want to disadvantage Ugandans, but because the refugees like us are all human beings, and it is our duty to take care of our neighbors, as the saying goes.
All right. In taking care of them, of course, I know that they are pressing needs. Robert, talk to us about the most pressing needs a refugee deals with on a daily.
Well, as Mr. Bafaki said, you know, refugees or no refugees, I think we need to be able to take care of our daily needs or basic needs. Here, when you talk about the basic needs, like, you know, the first thing that all the people look at, we need to have at least a meal, you know, on the table, food on the table every day. So if you don't have it, then that is a serious problem, because the stomach empty, you know, there's nothing that can do. As we are talking right now, I think, as also my sister here said, we have seen things happening, especially because of the reducing, the dwindling of the funds, like even the refugee settlement receiving the food that refugees used to receive earlier on. They're not getting it anymore. People are hungry. I was in the settlement recently here in Chakatu, whereby we have to interact with the teachers in one of our projects, and we realized that there are children who are not attending the classes, and the teachers easily said, these children are hungry. They cannot come to school when they are hungry. You can see, if someone is still at the position not even having food to eat, what else can we talk about it? And here we are talking about other basic needs. We make sure that you know, these refugees, they have access to this health, good health. Oh, of course, the government has done what it has done to let it open for the refugees to access this public hospital. But it's not all. You find that in hospital there are not enough medicines, there are not enough this and that, whereby sometimes these refugees cannot be able even to raise money to buy their own medicine. We are talking about education. There are still so many young people, as I said earlier, who are still out of school. At secondary level, it's still very low. Primary level, we still have issues. Tertiary level. These are the things that we are looking at. and it makes a lot of pressure to the parent. It's making a lot of pressure to the people who have children. How do they have to do so that they can make sure that the children get food, they go to school and so on? And it's really very, very challenging. Yes.
Speaking of challenges, Charity, let's talk about some of the challenges that refugees have been facing in terms of, being placed or displacement by and large. And in light of the fact that we had a pandemic that destabilized the globe, the funders, and all the other stakeholders.
He has already echoed on some of them. I think healthcare access is really a big problem. And I think for the vulnerable refugees, a number of households are struggling in that the children, the pregnant women, the elderly. Recently, while I was in office, there's a refugee woman who came in and she told me she has a mother who is 90 years. She has stroke, she has high blood pressure, she has this and that. And when she goes to the nearby KCA hospitals, things are not good. I was in the settlement last week for about 2 weeks. We were mainly mapping out, documenting some of the clients with serious war-related injuries. And in the interactions that we had, while there is the basic health care that they get in the settlement, a number of them came with those other communicable disease issues. And when we are only looking for war-related injuries, so you find that there is a lot to do in health, and a number of refugees are struggling with health issues, in that a sick and hungry refugee population, I don't know how I would describe it, but it's really not good. What they are going through is not good. Food has been reduced, disease is increasing in the settlements, and while even the small plot that some of them had, I was in Akivali settlement, and we saw buses carrying new arrivals from DRC. OPM has already shared about this. There are new arrivals, over 25,000 people still coming in. So for those who settled earlier, OPM gave them slightly bigger land, so they were doing farming. But because OPM is also struggling to where to settle the others,
the land is not getting bigger.
They are reducing on the size of plot they're giving. So they were crying. Food has been reduced. We do not have where to dig. OPM is settling in other people. What do we do? So it's really a lot, food insecurity, issues with the economic vulnerability, issues of education. He talked about education. We thank organizations that are doing what they are doing to ensure they give scholarships to the people who are in need of education, but very many do not access education. And in the end, children are becoming, either they are turning to do petty jobs, and maybe also their parents sending them to become maids, and also do the other cleaning work, construction work, and they are ending out, being exploited and abused as they look for those opportunities. So the refugee issue is really critical, and the psychological issues is worsening it. While you struggle with no food, you do not have, like opportunity to take your kids to access education. You're struggling, your family does not have any means, to survive. The only hope you had is at least you can get a meal from WFP. But now, food has been reduced. So it's a hungry population. It's a miserable person, institution, or maybe communities that are going to. And while organizations go there, they are also struggling with funding. So you can give a few. And the issue of giving targeted intervention to the refugees is also causing conflict and also confusion in the settlements. Because they will say organization-wise saying we are going to support pregnant women. Then the other population is left out. So they are also wondering, are we not part of them? There is maybe specific support that is being taken to care for the women, and the men are left out. So they're also complaining, we need inclusivity in all what we are doing.
All right, John Mary, this gives you a very interesting task as we come to the final bend of this discussion. What is the way forward? How do we get to stand with refugees in solidarity, helping them integrate, erasing the misconceptions that arise around them, especially around host communities and all?
Yes, in solidarity with the refugees, it is time, it is today and moving forward, we need to think about long-term solutions. And long-term solutions cannot be handled by one organization, GRS, YARID, Refugee Law Project, but together with government. And that's why we are there. Today we are talking about food, plate, having food on table. That is just hand to mouth. What are we able to do? Organizations have now started doing what we call skills training in vocation, skills in terms of hairdressing that we are doing, computer trainings, teaching languages, putting enablers like education facilities and those particular services where refugees are going to tap into. Because if you work with a society that is able to put a product on table in order to get an income, they are able to sustain themselves even with this reducing funding.
Okay.
That is the only way to go. And also a long term, also government, because Uganda as a government is peaceful, where our neighbors run to. How do we ensure that we create peace to the neighbors to ensure that we are living in a more welcoming environment, even enabling everyone to be able to perform and live a peaceful life? It is very important, and I think this is more of a diplomatic discussion.
Mr. Vafachi, this is a topic that is constant as far as your office is concerned, because it's a daily bread. You cannot control what happens in other countries. However, the effects do pour onto our country. So it begs the question, what other or recent innovations has the government come up with in order to have a successful integration of the refugees in order to, again, support the theme of standing with them in solidarity?
Thank you, moderator. But also to, first of all, respond lightly to my colleagues, especially Charity. You know, Refugee Law Project, they are activists, so they will always try to advocate and make advocacy their main trade. But I don't want us to paint a picture as if it is all they call it groom, or as if it is bad and so bad and people are dying. Refugees are not dying. They are living in the same situations like we live. There could be a few isolated, very hard situations, but generally speaking, refugees in Uganda, in my opinion, I have been to all these places where all of you have been. I think they are not in dire situation, otherwise they would all be dead. With $3 that WFP gives, who would survive on $3 a month? No one, I believe. And that they are living is a testimony that we are doing some work, and there is quite a lot of innovations that we have come up with as government and our friends UNHCR and others, including what we call humanitarian development, peace nexus, where you combine the three to make things move. And in that way, government of Uganda has been able to mobilize funding from a number of sources, especially development partners. You have World Bank giving Uganda grant funding to the tune of almost $1 billion, which has been given to different ministries to do interventions in the refugee settlements and among urban refugees. And currently, as you know, there have been projects like Dr. Deep. They have addressed a number of gaps. There is a new project, GROW, where money has been given to ministries and departments to do livelihood interventions, training, and others. I think these are doing quite a lot to bridge the gap. We cannot finish the gap, but I think we are doing something, and the international community through the development arm now, we are doing quite enough to ensure that there is some resources to fall back to by these refugees. In terms of peace,
yes, as you conclude.
As I conclude, there are also efforts in the neighboring countries, like Burundi, for example. The international community is supporting Burundi to receive back the refugees, and here we are doing voluntary repatriation back to Burundi. That is a durable solution, and I think
all right. Well, government, we want to say thank you so much for your continued work, but also to the partners that are working collectively with government to ensure that at the end of the day, we stand in solidarity with refugees. No matter where they came from and why they came here, we are supposed to support them, help them coexist, and have response programs that do help their integration into communities. And I trust that you've had something to take away home with you as we do celebrate the World Refugee Day today. We want to make sure that we're reminded that we are one. It's one blood, one people, and that is something that we should be having at the back of our minds as nationals and also as refugees. Robert Hakiza, Executive Director of YARID, thank you so much for your contributions to this discussion. Charity Immaculate with the Refugee Law Project, thank you so much for your efforts towards advocacy for the refugees. John Mary Chisembo, Project Director with Jesuit Refugee Services, also thank you so much. And of course, government, Mr. Charles Bafati from the Office of the Prime Minister, thank you so much. Trust that you have had something to take home with you today. Good day.